How to create an interactive and dynamic dashboard in Excel. This is what we're going to see in today's video. And as you guys can see, this dashboard, whenever I change here any option, the dashboard automatically change for me and update all the charts and all the values following the criteria that I just selected here before. Start with this left side of the dashboard. We have the slicers where we can choose a criteria. We can choose a filter following the months of the year from January to December. Here down below, we have a done chart where we can see and compare the proportions of each one of the categories against each other. So we can see the size of the slicer to use in this analysis, or we can also use the percentage itself of each one of the categories. Here to the right, we have a column chart, a modern looking column chart with this pinkish color, where we can see how much we just sold through each one of the dates of the month that we select here in this slicer. Here to the right again, we have a top 10, a top 15, a top 20 chart, where we can see the product that just sold the most in the top and the product that just sold the least here in the bottom. And up here, we have a tree map chart, a really cool, interesting chart in Excel where we can see and compare each one of the slicers that we have and see through the size of the slicers, what is the state, the region that sold the most, and also what is the region that sold the least. So we can have here two different analyses through the size of the tile and also by the data label itself, where it's showing us the value itself. To create this dashboard, we're going to need the help of some pivot tables in Excel. So we're going to need to see and learn and know how to make pivot tables in Excel in order to make the dashboard. But in order to make the pivot tables, we also going to need to have a table itself. This table that you are seeing right here is already formatting with all the correct formatting, but we're going to start with a raw data set, and then we're going to transform into a table itself with all the correct formatting, and then we're going to move on to the pivot tables itself, where we can create analysis, slice and dice the data set in order to create analysis, and then from the pivot table itself, we're going to be able to build this modern looking dashboard in Excel. So let's go and find out how can we make this dashboard in Excel step by step. Let's go. The first thing that we can do here is to understand the data set, because that way, as we know what do we have here as the informations, it's going to be possible to make some analysis with more precision. And we can use this analysis to make the pivot tables and then to make the dashboard itself. Let's start with the first column where we have some informations such as the order ID, the date, the product, the type, the product, and so on. And as we go through these columns, I can see that we have here some sales report. And then let's continue here. We have the quantity, the unit price, unit cost, and total cost, gross margin, customer name, and also the state. Okay, so through these informations that we have here, maybe we can start to think what type of analysis can we do or can we make in when we're going to use the some pivot tables. So as we have some sales report, I can start to think what type of analysis can I do or make. But before we do it, something important to do here is to adjust this data set. Make some adjustments here, because as you guys can see, such as the date, what type of date is that? I don't know, because it looks different, huh? 45, 29, 2. What type of date was that? Another thing that doesn't look right here maybe is the product name, because as you guys can see, the product name is larger than the column size. That way I can't see properly, or I can't see the whole product name, but just a part of the product name. So maybe it's a good idea to make some changes and some adjustments here in order to be able to see in a clear way the entire data set. Let's start with select the column A, just clicking over the letter A here in the column A, and then hold and drag down to the right, column A, B, C, D, and so on. It doesn't matter if you select more columns than you need, and then you're gonna double click in between one column and another. Okay, that way we can have this automatically adjustment in the column size. Another thing that we can do here is in the column B, transform these values right here into the correct format of a date that we are used to see. So we can select here the entire column B, and then Home tab. Here to the right, I have General, but I'm gonna click in this down arrow, and then I'm gonna go to Short Date option. I'm gonna click here, and here we got the correct date, January 1st of 2024, and so on. Okay, another thing that we can change here is maybe the format for all these four values that we have here, all these four columns with values: unit price, total, unit cost, and total cost. Because as we talk about values, as we are talking about money, maybe, it's important to format these values here as currency. It doesn't matter what type of currency you're gonna use here. So if you using maybe euros, you can put these values into euros. If you're using dollars, you can put these values into dollars. It doesn't matter, okay? Be free to use any type of format currency that you want to use here. I'm gonna select here these four columns, select everything, and then I'm gonna go to home, and I'm gonna click here general, and I'm gonna select currency, this first option right here. Or I can either click here in this little icon, accounting number format. I can click here, and all the values is gonna be formatted as a currency value, dollars. But you can use euros or other type of values, okay? Doesn't matter, or currency. Gross margin, we are using percentage, so it's important here to use, instead of the decimal numbers, we use percentage itself. So instead of using 0.22, we're gonna use 22%. I can select everything here in the column K, and then I go to home, and I'm gonna select here this little icon right here, percentage style. I can click here, and that's it. Now we're done the adjustments that we need to do in this data set. Now it's important to transform this data set into a table itself in order to make then pivot tables and then the dashboard. So the first step is done. Make some adjustments and understand the data set. Now it's important to transform the data set, the information that we have here, into a table itself. And to make a table here in Excel, you can click in any cell that you want that is inside the data, and then you go to the Insert tab, and then you click here, Table. Simple as that. Click here, and we need to be mindful here because we need to make this little box here, check it. My table has headers, yes, for sure. So we're gonna click here, OK, and that's it. Another thing that you can do here, if you want to do, you can click in Table Design and change the colors or the design, the styles of this table. But for me personal, I'm gonna just let this standard version here because it doesn't matter. The color is not gonna change the functionalities of the table. Now I can go here to the sheet 1, the first sheet that we have in this Excel workbook, and I'm gonna right click just over this sheet, and I'm gonna click rename. I'm gonna give it a name such as table, maybe. Enter, but you can give it the name that you want to give it. I'm gonna create here a new sheet, and then this new sheet right here, right click again, rename. Here is where we're gonna make some analysis with the help of the pivot tables. So we're gonna type it in here, pivot table. Okay, now we can come back to the table and we can start to creating the first pivot table in order to make some analysis. I can click here, insert pivot table, can click here, and I'm gonna have this little pop-up that is a new window. And something important here is, why should I use a pivot table instead of using formulas or functions in Excel? Why should I use pivot tables? Why should I use these two in Excel instead of using formulas and functions? I'm gonna talk about it later, but let's do here or make the first pivot table. I'm gonna click here, existing worksheet, and then I'm gonna click here in this up arrow. I go to the pivot table sheet that we just created before, and I'm gonna select maybe the A2 cell to input the pivot table right here. Down arrow and OK. So here we got our pivot table tools. To the left, we have the pivot table itself, or the place where we're gonna be able to see the data when we are making some changes. After we slice and dice the data, we're gonna be able to see over there. And here we have the pivot tables fields to the right, where we can basically create and make some changes, reorganize the data. So let me show you here, for example. To the right, we have all the columns that we have in the table. So order ID, date, product type, product ID, quantity, and so on, so on. If you have just maybe 3 different columns, you're only gonna have 3 different options right here. But as we have a lot of different columns, we have here a lot of different options. Simple as that. Down below here, we have 4 different options or fields. We have first the filter option, the columns, the rows, and then the values. The difference between these two right here is basically, let's say, in this pivot table right here, I want to see, and I want to make some analysis and know how much I just sold for each one of the months. So in each one of the rows, maybe I want to put a month, January, February, March, and so on and so on. And in the next column, I want to put the values. So I can use that fields that we have over there to the right and create this analysis and create this structure to the pivot table itself. And maybe it's kind respond the question that I did before. Why should I use a pivot table over a function or a formula? But something interesting here is you can actually use formulas and functions over the pivot table too. So it doesn't matter if you will use, okay, it's matter, but you can use pivot tables or you can use functions and formulas. You choose what's best is the best for you. So for example, a pivot table can easily help us to reorganize the table that we have here, the data. So let's say I ask you this question. What is the total sold? You can simply add up all the values that make up the total price column. And you can do it through a function, the sum function, to sum all the values that make up the total price columns. Okay, simple as that. But you can actually do it with using pivot tables. So to here, there's no much difference between function or a pivot table. But, and if I ask you a more specific question, such as, what is the total sold? So the column H, the total sold per product, and I give you a specific product. So you're gonna need to analyze two different columns, the column of the total sold and also the column with the products. So the first analysis and the second one. Here we have a more specific problem, a more specific question. What is the total sold by product per product? Can we use a function? Yes. Can we use pivot tables? Yes, of course. But here, as we make the analysis a little bit more complex with more criteria, maybe it's more easier to use the pivot table over functions. Because imagine you need to use 10, 15 different functions to solve a question. But with the pivot table is much easier because you basically need to click, hold, and drag and drop the option that you choose into one of the 4 fields that we had. Okay, so it's much simple to use. It's much easier to use a pivot table, depends on the situation. If you have a lot of different conditions, a lot of different criteria, it's much easier, at least in my opinion, to use the pivot table over the functions. But if you have a simple question to solve a simple problem, you can use, of course, functions to help you out. You're gonna analyze and see what's best for you. But here we're gonna use pivot tables because we're gonna make a couple of different and maybe more analysis with a couple of different conditions. So pivot table can help us with in a faster and easier way. So let's say here I want to analyze the total sold. Simple as that. I can take maybe the total price that is right here, click, hold, and drag just over here the values field, and I can release it here or I can drop it here. Okay, now we're gonna have a sum of the total price. And as you guys can see over here, the sum of total price is already appear, is being displayed now in the pivot table. So this is the total sold. Let's say now I want to make a more specific analysis here. And instead of just know the total sold, I want to know the total sold per date, per months. And I can take here, so the date, click, hold, and drag just over the rows because I want to each one of the rows be a date. So I can drag here, and that's it. As you guys can see here to the left in the pivot table, now I have the months, January, February, March, April, May, so on and so on. And also the total sold per each one of the months that I have. And here I have the grand total that is basically is a sum of all the values that make up each one of the months. If I click in a plus sign, whenever it can be whatever, April, maybe, I'm gonna have April 1st, April 2nd, April 3rd, and so on and so on. But let's say I don't want to know the months, but just the dates, such as April 1st or January 1st, January 2nd, and then February 1st, February 2nd, so on, so on, so on. Because the months we're gonna make, as you guys saw in the dashboard in the beginning of the video, we're gonna have the slicer with the options, with the buttons, where we can click in any of the buttons where I have the months, and we can filter all the dashboard immediately. So in order to create this slicer, I don't need to use the months right here because the months we can filter it later. So let me come back here to the rows field, and the months I'm gonna click, hold, and drag out to read it off this option, and also the date I can click, hold, and drag off in order to read it off. Now we have a more open analysis, let's say that way, instead of just having the months, we have here the complete date, January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and so on, till the December. So day by day. So this is the first analysis that we can make with the pivot table. Of course, you can make different analysis right here. You can see what you think it's a good analysis to do, and you can make it. One important thing here to be mindful is to click in this little floppy disk right here, in this diskette. Click to save the spreadsheet. Imagine if you realize that you just forgot to save the spreadsheet, and maybe imagine if you lost everything. So it's important to always press the flop disk to save the spreadsheet. Now, another analysis that we can make here maybe is I want to see how much I sold per product, maybe. Okay, so I have here a lot of different products, omega-3, creatine, peanut butter, and so on and so on. So I want you to see how much I sold for each one of the products. I can click Insert again, as we already learned it. Pivot table, existing worksheet. Click here in this up arrow and go to the pivot table, and I'm gonna place this run just right here in the cell D2. Down arrow, okay. Now we have here the second area of the pivot table, the second pivot table. As I want you to see the total sold by product, I can take the product, click, hold, and drag, and drop here in the rows to transform each one of the rows into a product, like this. Now I can take the total sold or the total price, click here, hold, and drop in the values field, like this. And we're done here. But something interesting here is maybe I can organize this data using as condition or criteria the values. So I want you the largest value be in the top and the smallest one be just here in the last position. To do it, you can use this little filter right here. I can click here, and that way we're gonna make the pivot table automatically sort the data for us. So it doesn't matter if you input, insert new rows, new informations, you update the values, it doesn't matter. If you change the values in the table, this pivot table right here is going to be automatically updated for you following this sort criteria that we're going to make right now. So I can click here, more sort options, and I want to sort in a descending order, or the largest value to the smallest one. And instead of using the product as criteria, I'm going to click and I'm going to use the total price as criteria. You can click here, okay, and yeah, the values are done. Something that we can do here to make the analysis a little bit more easier is select everything that I have here and clicking Home tab and change the number format. So I can use in a currency one. I can click here in this dollar sign, and that's it. Now it's easier to see what's happened with the values of each one of the products. I have here creatine, omega-3, olive oil, and so on and so on. Remember that I said before that we can create the slicer with the bottom options where I can click and select the month that I want to see the data. We can do it now. So let's click here. Maybe I can click in the second pivot table and I can go to pivot table analyze and I can click here insert slicer. With this option, I'm gonna choose months, then I'm gonna click OK. Now I have here this little slicer, and with this slicer I can click in any month, such as July, for example, and I can see that the date of the pivot table is going to be updated for me. And as you guys can see, this slicer right here is just change the data of the second pivot table, because this is always going to happen because we need to connect the slicer with all the pivot tables that we're going to have. Because we are not finished yet, we're going to have maybe here the pivot table number 3 and the 4th one. Maybe we can do it later, okay? So let's let for now the slicer right here, and then we can connect the slicer with all the different pivot tables that we're gonna have here. Another interesting analysis that we can make here maybe is to see the total sold per region. I think it's a cool one, but before we do it, let's say I want to know now the total sold per type or per category, because I have here supplements, oils, odors, and grains. I want to see and know how much I sold for each one of the categories. That way I can click in Insert, Pivot Table, Existing Worksheet, Upper Arrow, Pivot Table, and I can click now in the cell G2. Okay, let me move the spreadsheet to the right, set like this, and I want to see the total price in the values, like this. And I want to be more specific yet and see also the type in each one of the rows. And instead of using rows, if I use columns, what's going to happen? So take a look here. I'm going to use columns instead. I'm going to release right here. Now, instead of using rows and see the product through each one of the rows, now I'm using columns and I'm seeing the categories through each one of the columns. But I don't think it's a good way to analyze the data. At least I don't like it too much. So instead of using columns, I'm going to move it to the rows. Okay, like this. Now I think it's much better. Now, the last analysis that we can do here, just to not make this video or the dashboard too much complex, we can see how much we sold per state. So let's take here insert, pivot table, existing worksheet, up arrow, pivot table, and then I can click here in the cell J2. Down arrow, OK. As the rows, I want to see the states, and as the value, I want to see the total price. Okay, here we got. And that's it, simple as that. Now we can just click in this close option and we can start making the chart itself. But before we do it, let's connect this slicer with all the 4 different pivot tables that we have here. So I can right click in the slicer and I can choose report connections. As you can see here, we have 4 different options and we need to connect and check this checkbox right here for all the different pivot tables that we have. Okay, now look what's going to happen when I change here an option. All the pivot tables are going to be automatically updated whenever I choose another option. Don't forget to click in the flop disk and the diskette to save the spreadsheet. Another thing that we can do here with this slicer is going to the slicer option, and instead of using 1 column, I can change to 2, because the way we can have a more complete, a more easier way to see the data right here, because it's gonna split, and we're gonna have January, March, June, July, and so on. So it's much easier to see the data through these informations that we have right here. Another interesting thing that we can do here is right click in the slicer, and then I can go to the slicer settings. There's a lot of options, items, values that has no data. So we can click here, hide items with no data. That is these 2 buttons below right here. I can hide in this option. So hide items with no data. And another thing is I can display no headers. So I can uncheck this checkbox right here. Another thing that we can do is maybe change the item sorting and filter options. So we can use oldest to newest, newest to oldest, or use custom list when sorting. But I'm gonna use this first option right here, ascending order. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Now we have here a better way to visualize the data through the slicer. And because we already finished, we already done with the pivot tables, we can now create the dashboard itself. So we're gonna click here, new sheet, right click, rename, dashboard, enter, okay. The first thing that I like to start with is to make some changes in the column size, because that way it's easier to place each one of the areas of the charts that we're going to use here in this dashboard. In this dashboard right here, maybe we can create a structure that's look like this. So here we can have the slicers, maybe here we can have like a little chart, and here we can have another type of chart, and so on and so on. But before we place the areas of the charts, I think it's easier to make some changes in the columns, because that way we know the threshold or the limit to where the area is going to go, okay? So we're going to select here the column A, and then I'm going to press and hold the Ctrl to be able to continue to select different columns at the same time, okay? So we're going to press and hold the Ctrl key, and then I'm going to select here the column E, and also the column Q, and also the column W, but the column W is not appear here for me. But I can click here and move the column to the spreadsheet to the right. And then here we got the column W, and don't forget to use the Control key to select again all these multiple columns at the same time. Now maybe I can go to column Q, for example, right click, and then column width, and I can change the column width. Instead of 8.43, I can use 2 instead. Enter, that's it. Now it's much easier to know where to place each one of the areas of the charts that we're going to use right here. Now let's see. We can create the areas But to create the areas, we can click Insert, Illustrations, and we can use shapes to help us. You can use any type of different shapes that you want to use, but here I'm gonna use one that I like the most. That is the rectangle with rounded corners. I can click here, and this one right here I'm gonna place just right here, for example. So we're gonna leave it the first row free, and also the column E and the column A free. And I'm gonna take this first shape right here, this rectangle, to the row 17, and the row 18 is gonna be free. Another thing that we can change here is the how much round we want to use in the rectangle. So we can click in this little orange circle right here and move it to the right to make it rounder, or move it to the left to make it a little bit more sharper in the edges. I'm going to stick maybe with this option right here, just a little bit round in the corners. Now I can click in this shape, Ctrl C, Ctrl V to copy and paste. And then I'm going to place this one just right here, move it a little bit down, letting the row 18 blank. I'm going to change again the how much round I want in the corner, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. Now this one right here is going to be to the side, to this column right here. Then I can adjust again the roundness like this, and maybe this one right here I can bring a little bit up to the column 12, this column right here. Maybe I can bring it a little bit down. Okay, so here we got another or something that is important to tell here. My computer has a specific dimensions, a size of the screen have a specific size. So if you are using a computer that has a different size, maybe you can change the area. Okay, you don't need to use the same area, the same placement that I'm using here. You can use different areas, different sizes of the charts areas. Okay, it depends on the computer that we are using. Let me Ctrl C, Ctrl V again in this new rectangle right here. I'm gonna place this one just here. I'm gonna change the roundness, maybe here. This one is gonna be like this. Now the last area that we can create here, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, is to the right to make the last area of the last chart that we're gonna build here. Okay, like this. Yeah, I think now it's good. Don't forget to save the spreadsheet, and the area are almost done. Something that we can do here is to paint the background with a different color, and also to paint each one of the rectangles, or I mean, we're gonna create a different design for just one rectangle, and then we can copy and paste the format for all the rectangles that I have. So we just gonna need to do it once. We're gonna start with the background color. So let me select here all the cells that I have in the background. And then I'm gonna click in the home tab ribbon, and I'm gonna choose here fill color, this blue right here. Okay. Now we can move on and create a different style for the shapes, the rectangle shapes that we have. I'm gonna click in the first rectangle, right click, format shape to the right. I'm gonna start with maybe the fill, solid fill. I'm gonna choose a white color, and for the line or the borders, I'm gonna choose a greenish one, maybe this one right here, light gray. And the width, I'm gonna let it in 1. Okay. Now I can go here to the effects, glow, and I'm gonna use maybe a blue color right here, blue accent 5. The size, maybe I can choose 15. The transparency, maybe I can use 75. Let's see if it's good. Yeah, I think it's kind good. Maybe the size can be 10. Or actually I can use 12 in the size, or 15. Yeah, I think 15 is good. So this settings right here, size is equal to 15 and transparency 75%. Now I can close this panel, and we're done with the first area of the first chart. But instead of doing it manually all over again to all the rectangles that we have, it's smarter to select the first rectangle, click in the Run Ribbon tab, and then I can double click here in the Format Painter 1, 2, and then I select all the rectangles. I just click over 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's it. So we're done with the areas of the rectangles that we have here. Maybe I think the glow is a little bit too larger. It's too much stretch out to the sides. So right click, format shape. I'm gonna just decrease a little bit the size. Instead of using 15, I'm gonna stick with 10. I think it's better. Okay, close, and then again home tab, double click in the Format Painter 1, 2, and then select again all the rectangles that we have. Okay, that's it. Don't forget to click in the floppy disk to save the spreadsheet. Now we can move on and start to create the data in the dashboard itself. Let's get back here to the pivot table, take this slicer, right click, cut, and then I can go to the dashboard, click in a cell, okay, it's important, Ctrl V to paste. Now I can just place this slicer just right here, bring it a little bit down, maybe like this. I'm gonna click in this circle in the middle right, bring a little bit in, and also here in the bottom a little bit up. Now with the keyboard key, I'm gonna adjust the position of the slicer, such as this. I can click again in the slicer, and I can go to slicer option and increase the height of the slicer buttons. Maybe I can use 1.3 or either 1.35. Let's see if it's possible. 1.35 or 1.33. Okay, 1.33. I think it's much better. Another thing that we can do here is create here a title for the dashboard. I'm gonna click insert to the left text box, and I'm gonna place the text box area just right here on the top. I'm gonna give the name such as maybe Jopa Excel dashboard, but you can give the name that you want you to use. Okay, you don't need to hope the name that I'm giving to my dashboard right here. Let me select everything inside this box, Home tab. I'm gonna centralize everything in the middle. I'm gonna put everything in bold. Increase a little bit the font size to 16 maybe. I'm gonna change the colors to maybe a greenish, maybe this one right here. This first row right here, I can select Home tab and move to the left. And this one right here, I can select and move to the right. Just give a different style. Now in the same way that we did to the slicer, I can bring a little bit in, and with the keyboard key, I can place it just in the middle. I'm gonna click in format, shape outline, no outline, shape fill, no fill, because that way we can read it off the background of the text, and we can use the background of the rectangle that we just did before. Another thing that we can do here is maybe add a little icon right here to make the dashboard maybe better. I can click insert, illustrations, icons. Maybe the version of Excel that you are used to use, ain't got these icons. So we can take the icons in the Google, for example. You can copy and paste right here in the dashboard. You can use Google to help you with that. I'm gonna use here, let's see the options, maybe commerce. Let's see what we have here. Maybe I can use, or no, I don't like these options right here. Yeah, maybe I'm gonna use this one right here. I can click here, insert, and with this icon, I'm gonna place just on top, on the right top of the title that I have here. Maybe like this. And I'm gonna change the color. Instead of using the black color, I'm gonna change to blue, to a bluish color to match with the background that I have. Maybe this blue right here, I think it's good. And that's it. So this is the first part of the dashboard. And of course, we can change the layout and the design of the slicer to match with the dashboard that I want to build here, that I am pretending to do. And that's gonna be much better. And if you click in the slicer, you can see that you already have a lot of different options of layout. Slicer, and you can click here in this down arrow, and you'll have a couple of different options. So you have the yellow one, the orange one, the blue one, the green one, and so on and so on. But let's say you are not happy with the options that Excel gives to you. So you want to customize and create your own style and design for the slicer. You can click in the slicer, and then you can go to slicer, click in this down arrow, and you're gonna go here. Click here, new slicer style. I already done my slicer, but you can click new slicer style that I'm gonna show you how can we create the same slicer that I'm gonna use here. So you are in this screen right here, okay? New slicer setting style. You can give your slicer a name, and in this first option right here, whole slicer, you can click format, and you can choose the same options that I'm using here. Font style bold in color black, and fill, you're gonna choose white. Okay, now this option right here, selected the item with data, you can click format, you can choose font, bold, and white, and in fill, you can use this pink color. But if you don't have this pink color, of course, you can click more colors, custom, and you can just copy this hex, HAX color that I have here, this code, FF0066. Okay, just copy this code, press enter, And okay, that's it. You're gonna have the same exact color that I'm using here. Now, unselected item with data, format, font, bold, and white. And in fill, you're gonna use this type of blue, this bluish right here. More colors, custom. You're gonna just copy the same code that I have here. B4C6E7. Okay, okay. And now hovered select item with data, format, font, bold, and black. And fill, we're gonna use this modern looking greenish color. More colors, custom, and then you're gonna copy this same code right here, 66FFCC. Okay, okay. And the last option that we're gonna change is hovered and selected item with data, format, font, bold, and black. Fill is the same green, but I'm gonna read for you again. I'm gonna spelling it again. So 66FFCC, okay? Just copy this code, press enter, okay, and okay. So now we're gonna have a different style of slicer. And it's important, the slicer is not gonna appear here for you automatically. So you need to click in the slicer again, and then you can go to the slicer. In this down arrow, you're gonna have access to the new slicer style that we created with me. So just click here, custom. Okay, here we got the custom slicer style. It's much better, in my opinion, than the standard versions that Excel gives to us. I can click in any button right here, and you can see that we have three different colors. The standard one, that is this bluish color in the background, and when I hover over a button with the cursor of the mouse, you can see that the button changes the colors to greenish, and when I select one option, you can see that it's going to have this pinky-wish color. It's much better, huh? Don't forget to click on the flop disk to save the spreadsheet. Now we can move on and create the charts itself. I can go back to the pivot table and create all the charts at once, and then we can change the design, the layout of the charts. Let's start with the first pivot table. So just to make it clear, we have the pivot table number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. I'm going to start with the number 1, the first one. I'm going to click in the pivot table and then insert. Here, maybe we can use, as we have the dates and the values, maybe it's a good idea to use a column chart. Column chart, column chart. Okay. Now, right click, cut, dashboard, Control V. This one I'm gonna place in the large area in the middle of the dashboard that we have right here. Okay. We're not gonna change anything now, the design, the layout, but we're gonna change it later at once. Now the second pivot table I can click. As we have the products and also the total sold for each one of the products, maybe it's gonna look into a top 10 chart or a chart where we can see the most sold product to the least sold product. So I can click here, insert, column chart, but I'm gonna choose now a bar chart. Right click, cut, dashboard, Control V. I click right here to move the chart. Okay, yeah, that's it. Another chart that we can create here is using this third pivot table. As we have just a couple of different categories, a couple of different criteria, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe we can use a donut chart. So I can click insert, donut chart, or a pie chart. It's a really good option too, but I'm gonna choose donut chart. This one right here, I'm gonna cut, and I'm gonna paste right here in the dashboard. This one is gonna be in this small area that we have to the left of the dashboard right here. Now the last pivot table that we have is the states and the values for each one of the states. Of course, we can use here a map chart to see through the map the regions, the states where we just sold the most, or to compare, analyze each one of the solds, the sales that we have for each one of the states. But actually, I want to use a different chart right here that is called map tree chart. So insert is right here, and here tree map chart. I can click here, but as you guys can see, the Excel is gonna give me an error that I'm not able to use the tree map chart with a pivot table. So how can I do now? In order to make it possible, I can extract off to the side the data that I have here, and that way we're gonna be able to make the tree map chart in the dashboard. How can I do it? Extract off to the side the pivot table data. Simple, equals, sign, and then I can select the first cell, Arizona, enter. I can click in the cell in the down right corner, click, hold, and drag down right here, and then Control C, click to the side, Control V. That's it, simple as that. Another thing that we can do here is right click in this pivot table just to read it off this grand total right here. I can go to pivot table options and total and filters. I can read it off these options. Okay, yeah, that's it. Now I can select here everything to the side, the states and also the values, insert, and I can go to the same chart as before, a tree map chart. Now it's possible to use a tree map chart. Let's right click, cut, go to the dashboard, Control V. And that way we can place right here the chart that we're gonna use. Okay, now we can start to make some changes, and the first changes that I want to make to all the charts that we have is to read it off the background. So I can select the first any chart that I want to start with, and I'm gonna read it off the shape outline and also the shape fill. You can do the same, okay? Because that way, instead of using the area of the chart, we're gonna use the area of the rectangle that we create in the beginning of the dashboard. This makes no sense to use the area of the chart when we have the area of the rectangle that we created before. So when you read it off the area of these three first charts, now let's move on to the last one. Format, shape outline, shape no outline, shape fill, no fill. Yeah, that's it. Much better. Another thing that I like to do is read it off. Let's start with this first chart right here, tree map chart. Click in the title, read it off the title. Click in the legend right here, read it off, delete it. I'm gonna do the same thing here to the chart to the right. Read it off the legend and read it off the title and the legend right here. And also these values that I have here, read it off. Another thing, in the charts that we created using a pivot table, we're gonna have this grayish button or this grayish filter. We can read it off to this option, and I'm gonna do it. So select the chart and pivot chart analyze, fields, buttons, hide all. Okay, like this. I'm gonna do the same thing for all the charts that I have. So pivot chart analyze, fields button, hide all, and let me delete here the total, title, and also here the legend, total. Okay, now this donut chart right here, I'm gonna do the same thing. Pivot chart analyze, field buttons, hide all, and also I'm gonna read it off the title. Okay, like this. Now we have a much better and clean look to the dashboard. We can make some changes here in order to be able to visualize the data with a better way. But before we do it, just to you guys see, if you click here in any filter button, in any option in the slicer, all the dashboard is going to be sorted and filtered following the criteria, the option that we choose here to the left in the slicer option. That way we can see that the dashboard is already automatically changed whenever you choose a new option, a new filter. Okay, look here, the tree map chart is a chart where we can see the proportions and compare to the size of the tiles, which region or which state just sold the most and sold the least. And also we can add here, instead of using just the name of the state, also the value itself. We can add it here later. Here to the right, we have basically the top chart, the top 10, top 15, top 20 products that just sold the most. But here something to be mindful is we need, or is most common, to put the product that sold the most on the top and the product that sold the least in the bottom. So we need to invert this chart right here, just invert it. With this chart right here, down below the column chart, we can see how much we sold through the months. It's a simple chart, but it's useful to see how much we sold or the evaluation, the transformation, the change of the values through the dates. And here to the left, we have a done chart where we can also compare as the tree map chart the proportions of the categories, proportions of the things that we are comparing against each other. So we can see each one of the slicers and the size of each one of the slices in comparison to the other ones. It's a similar chart in a certain way to the tree map chart, where we can see the size of the slices, and here we can see and compare the size the slices, and here the tiles, okay, size of the tiles, size of the slicers. Now, in order to make the changes that we need in the background of the charts, let's start with this first chart right here, or the done chart, right? So I'm gonna click in the chart itself, not the outside area of the chart, okay, to select everything, and then I can go to design and chart element. The first thing that I'm gonna do here, instead of use the legend to the right, I'm gonna move it down, so I can choose here legend and bottom. Okay, like this. Another thing in the same place is add chart element, data labels, and I'm gonna choose the option show, like this. But instead of using values, the total sold in each one of the categories, I want to see in percentage. So I can right click, format data labels, and here I want to use percentage. First, you check the percentage checkbox, and then you uncheck the value and the show leader lines. Okay, like this. Now let me select here the area within the area of the chart, or the area of the done chart, and I'm gonna click, hold, and drag up a little bit, and also click, hold, and drag down a little bit to make the done chart a little bit larger and easier to see. Now let's select the values itself, the percentage, and then home tab. I can increase the font to maybe 10.5, put it in bold, and change the color to white. Or also I can use 11 in the font size, like this. Now I'm gonna select the slicer, all the slicers, okay? And let's move on to this option, series option. The angle of the first slice, I always like to change this option, because as you guys can see, we can rotate the slicer. I think it's give an interesting effect. So we're gonna let into 314. The donut explosion, I also think it's a good option to use, maybe 3%. And the donut whole size, I'm gonna maybe use 55%. Enter. Yeah, okay, I think it's good. 55%, like this. Now we're gonna make some changes in the colors. We have here the yellow one, the grayish one. But before we do it, as you guys can see, we have this large division, just sever, split one slice to another. So maybe we can make it a little bit smaller. Let's click in the slicer again, the slice, and then I can go to the fill line, border. I can choose no line. Okay, that option right here. Now I can choose just the yellow one, fill, solid fill, and I can choose here a color, maybe a green one. But I'm gonna click here more colors, because we can see specifically what is the settings that we're gonna use. The green one is gonna be 66, 66, FFCC. Enter, like this. The blue one is gonna be pink, so I'm gonna click here in the colors, more colors, and the settings is gonna be FF0066. Enter. The orange is gonna be a blue one that is gonna have the HEX like 3399FF. Enter. And this gray one is gonna have orange color, like this one right here, following these settings, FF9914. Enter. Okay, here we got another thing that we can do here. I'm gonna just press ESC to unselect the chart. I'm gonna click in the chart again, in the slice, and I'm gonna go to the shadow options, effects, shadow. I'm gonna choose the first option, shadow, transparency. Maybe I can use 30%, blur 2, enter, and yeah, that's it. I think it's much better now. I can close it, and don't forget to save the spreadsheet, click in the flop disk, and that's it. This is our done chart in Excel. I think it's have an interesting look, eh? Okay, now we can move on and maybe make some changes. This chart right here, this column chart, I can start with right-clicking these values, or yeah, right-clicking the values to the left, format axis. Because we are talking about currency, money, dollars, or euros, doesn't matter what type of currency you are using, but it's important to use the specific currency to have more preciseness in the data. Right click, and then here in number, I'm gonna choose general, I'm gonna use currency. Okay, in decimal places, I'm gonna stick with 0, enter, like this. Now I'm gonna click in the columns, and I can go first to the effects. I'm gonna insert a shadow effect right here, transparency 30%, blur 2, And maybe the distance I can also use 2. I can go now to fill align as fill. I'm gonna use solid fill and I'm gonna use a pink color, the same pink that we used before in the done chart. So probably it's gonna be in recent colors. It's gonna be there for you, okay? Border, solid line, and also again I'm gonna use the same pink color. But here we're gonna make something different. In the width, we're gonna increase it much more. So instead of using the one as we are used to use, maybe I can use 8 or 9 or 8. 8 I think is better. 8. So 8 pt, and the cap type or the joint type we're gonna change. Instead of using round, I'm gonna use bevel. Okay, so joint type I'm gonna use bevel. I can close this panel and that's it. So this is our second chart. I can click in the chart again. Maybe I can click in Home tab and change the font color to a black one. So black. Now it's easier to see the text. I'm gonna do the same thing here for the legend of the done chart. Home tab and put the font in black. Okay. Now this chart here to the side, where we have a bar chart. First, we need to invert the position of the bar. So right click here in the names of the products, format axis, and I can go to categories in reverse order. Okay, if I close here, as you guys can see now is in a correct order. Let's move the spreadsheet to the right in order to be able to see the chart. These grid lines in the background, I can click in the grid lines and delete it, read it off. Now we're gonna right click in the column chart, or before we do it, let me click in the cell, click in the chart again, just in the outside area, and then design here to the left, add chart element, and I can choose the option, maybe data labels, show outside end, like this. Okay. Now I can double click in the bar, 1, 2, in order to open this right panel. I'm gonna choose effects, shadow, basically the same shadow that we are using all the time, 30%. In transparency, blur is equal to 2, and distance is also equal to 2. Now the fill line, the fill is going to be solid fill, and we're going to use orange one, the same orange that we used before in the done chart. And also the border, solid line, and also the color is going to be orange, the same orange that we used before. But here the width, I'm going to increase a little. Maybe, let's see what's going to looks better. Maybe 10. Yeah, I think 10 is good. 10. Instead of using cap type or joint type as round, I'm going to use bevel, like this. Bevel, I think it's good. Now let me click in the value itself, and I'm going to go to this last option, level options. Let me close this. Number, I'm going to stick with maybe currency, and I'm going to use 0 decimal places. Enter. Like this. Or also, maybe we can customize here the code. So I'm going to use $, hash, sign, period, or dot, or point, and then K, because this indicates to Excel to use 1,000. So instead of have 1,003 zeros, okay, so 1,000, we're gonna have 1K. That way we have a shorter number, and it's not occupy a large area in the chart. So I can click here, add. Okay, let's see if it's gonna work. Yeah, I think it's almost there, so maybe we can make some changes here. Instead of using this dot, let's see what's happening if I use a comma instead. Comma, I think it's comma. Add, and yeah, that's it. So it's comma instead of using the dot, the point. Something that you can see is the number is too close to the area, to the bar itself. So in order to make it apart, we can go to this option right here, size and properties, maybe alignment. Here, left margin, I can increase to 0.1. Yes, 0.1, I think it's good. Now I can close it, and that's it. Our third chart is done. Let me select the entire area of this chart and change the font size to black. Home, black, and that's it. Oh, something that is happening again is the values now is too much close to the bar. So double click again. I need to do it all over again. So alignment, left margin, 0.2 maybe. Let me close it. Or I don't know why this happened, but we need to stick with 0.1. So click here in the values, this option right here, 0.1. Yeah, okay. Now it's better. The last settings that we can do here in order to make our dashboard complete is to change something in the tree map chart. Let me right click in the tree map chart, format data series, or before we do it, chart design. I'm gonna add also, instead of just having the data labels using the name of the state, I will also want to see the value of each one of the styles that I have here. Add chart element, data labels, and show. Yeah, but I'm gonna click here, more data labels options. I will also want to see the value itself. And I want to use a currency with just 0 or none decimal places. Enter, that's it. Now we can close. Now I think the tree map chart is much better to visualize the data. Another thing that we can do is clicking in just the data labels, home tab, put everything in bold, and also click here, format, put some shadow in the text to make it more clear to see. Now again, I'm gonna go to shadow. The shadow is already selected, but I'm gonna go to shadow options, and the transparency I'm gonna go to 0. The blur I'm gonna use 2, and yeah, that's it. Now the last touch that we can give to the tree map chart is change some tiles colors, such as I'm gonna double click in this first one, 2, click it again just to select the first tile, and I'm gonna use as the fill, a solid fill, and the blue that we used before to the donut chart, for example, this one right here. Okay, now this yellow one right here. Let's see if we have a different yellow color to use, or maybe we can stick with just the golden accent for the color, the standard color of Excel. This orange right here, I'm gonna use the orange that we used before, this one, and maybe this another blue right here. I can change to pink, the pink that we used before, and this weird color right here that I don't know what color is that. I can change to green one, okay, and this one to the side. Maybe I can use again a color that we used before, and that's it. So we can make some small changes, maybe randomly through the tiles of the map chart, and we can see what's going to happen and if it's looking better or not. The last change that I can do here, okay, so let me close, and yeah, that's it. I think as you guys saw, I make just small changes in the tree map chart. I just select not all the tiles to change the colors, but just a couple ones, and the final result is much better than we have previews. So that's it. So this is how we can make an interact and dynamic dashboard in Excel. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys also enjoyed the final result of this dashboard. And if you have any questions or any suggestions to the next videos, let me know, comment down below, and I see you tomorrow. As everybody has a new video, I see you there.